The problems with urban outdoor cats are complex and multidimensional. And because of this, we need to approach problems with a holistic lens and take action from different angles. The ideas that I'm going to be discussing are part of my postdoctoral research at the University of Guelph in Ontario and has been created in collaboration with all of these different folks and organizations who are all phenomenal groups and individuals. New technology has enabled us to learn a lot about how cats are moving around the landscape and also what they're doing when they're outdoors. So, numerous studies across North America have consistently demonstrated the similar findings. And the technology that we're learning from is based on cat cams. So, these are collar or cameras that are attached to the collars of cats that record all the movements of cats or all the activities of cats when they're outside from the sort of cat's eye perspective. And they also have a GPS collar that allows us to track the movements of cats when as they go around a city. But based on these studies, we know that cats are most common where people are. We know that owned cats generally stay within about 50 meters of their home. We know that cats often avoid large green spaces where predators are present, so such as large urban forests. We know that males wander farther than females, and we know that cats wander farther at night than they do during the day. And we also know that unowned cats travel farther than owned cats. Now, regardless of where they are, cats impose three major concerns, three major conflicts in as they exist in the urban environment. And those three conflicts are predation, transmission of zoonotic diseases, and the compromised welfare of the cats themselves. And I'm going to talk about these one by one. So the first is with predation. Predation by cats is the number one source of human-caused mortality of North American birds. Um, and they are actually implicated in the extinction of over 40 species of birds and mammals globally. So the figure that I have on the side here shows the number of endangered species on the y-axis, broken down by category of birds, mammals, or reptiles. The gray bars represent the number of threatened or endangered, and the red bars, unfortunately, refer to the number of species from that group that have gone extinct, at least partially because of outdoor cats. Now, in Canada, we know that cats kill between 19 and 197 million birds annually. This is a very new number. This is from data that was published just a couple of months ago, or even a month ago, in October 2025. We know that between 45 and 90% of owned cats hunt. Now, this is quite a broad range, and it varies a lot based on geography, opportunity, social norms, and so on. And we also know that cats kill 4 to 5 times more wildlife than they return to their owner. So this means that owners have a very biased perspective of what is going on with their cat. Now, the second conflict to be concerned about is with disease transmission. Cats are known carriers of highly pathogenic avian influenza. They can carry and become infected by H5N1. They're also carriers of other zoonotic pathogens, such as different Salmonella species and Toxoplasma gondii. Cats are one of the mandatory hosts for Toxoplasma as well. We know that outdoor cats are about 3 times more likely to carry parasites than indoor cats. And it's these close interactions that are taking place between cats and people, the close face-to-face contact that really enables the transmission of zoonoses and makes cats have a very strong potential in terms of disease transmission. The third conflict is the compromised cat welfare of the cats themselves. So from these cat cameras, these cameras that are worn on the collars of cats when they're outside, we know that cats are engaging in a lot of very risky activities when they're outdoors. So the graph on the right here shows different risky activities that were viewed from cat cameras by 55 cats in Georgia in the US. And you can see that crossing roads is by far the most frequent risky behavior that cats take on. And this is really important because vehicle collisions are one of the most common causes of mortality to cats. The data that I'm showing here are from cats that were brought into animal shelters in Saskatoon, and trauma from vehicular collisions represented the highest proportion of mortalities. Outdoor cats have reduced lifespan compared to indoor only cats. Indoor cats have a lifespan of average 12 years, but the outdoor counterparts only 3 years. Another piece of the compromised cat welfare is the predation of cats. Cats are increasingly becoming prey to urban carnivores. There's evidence of domestic cats in diet analyses of coyotes across North America. Um, and we're increasingly seeing the presence of bobcats in cities and with anecdotal evidence with stories of how they are preying on cats, on domestic cats. So while we don't have data on the prevalence of bobcat predation of domestic cats, I think it's probably only a matter of time. Now, the challenging thing about cat conflicts and figuring out how to address them is that there is a potential solution. We could just solve all of these conflicts if we simply removed all the cats from the outside. Cats are the problem, remove the cats. And while this is theoretically possible, it's very unlikely to be achieved. So then we have to ask if we can identify potential solutions using a holistic approach instead of just a one-size-fits-all tactic. This is where the One Health lens fits in. So, One Health is the idea that human health intersects with animal health, intersects with environmental health. And we can see cat relationships and cat interactions from this viewpoint. Cats interact with people, with cat owners, with residents, with caretakers, people who love cats, people who don't love cats. Cats interact with wildlife, with prey, with predators, and also with mesocarnivores, those medium-sized mammals that like raccoons and skunks that they often interact with. And cats are interact with the environment, both the physical landscape, but also the municipalities in terms of the public services and the bylaws and regulations. Now, if we think about all of these relationships and all of these interactions, in the center, there exists a space where we could potentially sustainably coexist with cats, given that cats are probably going to be in the outdoor landscape for many years to come. So finding a way to live sustainably with them, mitigating these conflicts is really important. Cats and wildlife, the conflicts that we see with cats, so the predation, the disease transmission, and the welfare of the cats themselves are really important to think of in terms of cats and wildlife because the conflicts are in fact predicated on the spatiotemporal overlap between cats and wildlife. The conflicts are occurring because cats and wildlife are interacting in space and time. We know that can lure predators, into residential areas, particularly homes in exurban or suburban areas. And this impacts not only the cats themselves, but the other wildlife species that are living in that area, such as raccoons, but also small birds, small mammals, and other species. We also know that prey are learning to avoid, there's some evidence, I should say, that prey are learning to avoid areas where cats are prevalent. Prey, particularly songbirds, may simply decide not to occupy areas where there are a lot of cats. And now, when we think about cat conflicts and the role of people, well, we are the ones who are providing cats on the environment, providing and sustaining cats in the environment. So, when we think about pet owners and cat caretakers, we are the ones who are allowing pets outside and caring for unowned cats. We know that 37% of Canadian cat owners allow their pets outside. And these are new data from 2023. We know that 70% of outdoor cats are owned pets. And we also know that there are about 1 million unowned cats outdoors, but most of those are not feral. They're owned by owned or not owned, sorry. They're cared for by people. When we think about why people are letting cats outside, they do so for a lot of different reasons. Owner behavior is guided by the social norms of their surroundings, as well as their own personal values, beliefs, and perspectives. It's not uncommon, and these are based on data from Canada and British Columbia, for owners to say, well, my cat is happiest outside. Cats belong outside. I can't keep my cat indoors. Or perhaps most worrisome, my cat doesn't hunt. People also enhance the conflicts that we have with cats by providing supplemental food to cats and wildlife. So this can happen intentionally, where people are intentionally feeding unowned cats, cat colonies. It can also happen where people are feeding birds. And I'm in no way suggesting that we shouldn't have bird feeders, but I am making note of the fact that bird feeders are spaces created by people where cats and wildlife are interacting. So it is of note. People are also occasionally intentionally feeding mesocarnivores. People put out food for raccoons or possums or sometimes even coyotes. There's also unintentional supplementary feeding, and this is in the form of uncontained refuse or compost, also littering. These are area opportunities where animals can interact based on food sources created by people. Now, of course, cat conflicts are influenced by the landscape, where green spaces exist in an urban landscape and how many there are really influences cat wildlife interactions. So these green spaces can be large and small public green spaces, anything from a lightly managed urban forest to a small community garden, but also on private land, private pollinator gardens or unmanicured lawns and gardens. These are habitats or areas where cats and wildlife can interact. Of course, municipalities also influence cat conflicts based on bylaws, based on animal control practices to reduce the number of outdoor cats, but also manage the wildlife species that are present in the city. The availability of accessible veterinary services and animal shelter capacity, even things like sanitation services are important in understanding the food sources that bring cats and wildlife together. And then also, of course, public health when we think about the conflicts relating to disease transmission. Now, before we implement any kind of mitigation strategy, there is some baseline information that we need in order to make these strategies the most effective. And these include understanding the outdoor cat populations. How many cats are there? Are they owned, unowned? Are they truly feral cats? Where are the cats the most prevalent? This information is really important to have as when implementing an intervention. We also need to understand the wildlife. Who lives with us in this city? Are there species at risk or threatened species? If so, where are they found? We need to know who the cats are interacting with, who they're depredating, in order to best manage their behavior. And lastly, we need to understand the people. Who are the owners who are letting their pets outside? Why are they doing this? And perhaps most importantly, are they willing to change? Soon, Nature Canada will be providing a cat counting guide for municipalities based on trail cameras. Now, based on what I've said already, thinking of cats as these entities that are interacting with wildlife, with people, with the environment in complex and overlapping ways, what are some ways that we can reduce the conflicts with cats? How can we reduce the predation, reduce the risk of disease transmission, improve cat welfare? And these are ways that can work in conjunction or alongside of municipal bylaws. The first way is by engaging with cat owners to um, to shift behaviors and ultimately change social norms. So these are what I'm referring to is describing outreach that result or with the intention of creating behavior changes in cat owners. But these outreach campaigns really need to be tailored to the perspectives, the values, and the experiences of the owners. a single one-size-fits-all outreach campaign is not going to be relevant to every cat owner. And so it's important to think about who is on the receiving end. And I'll give you an example. There's one study that compared two different outreach campaigns. So the one is from the image base next to letter A, and it features a veterinarian holding a cat that says, "Keep Fluffy safe from cars, bring your cat in at night." And the second outreach campaign shows a child holding a cat, the same cat, and it says, "I love when Fluffy sleeps on my bed. Bring your cat in at night." So the researchers used both of these outreach campaigns. So they created posters and pamphlets with both of these messages and found that both of these resulted in a reduction in the number of cats that were outside at night. But it really different owners were impacted by the different campaigns. So owners who had previous experience with vehicular collisions in cats responded really strongly to the outreach campaign A with the veterinarian. Owners who had children, however, responded really well to the campaign B with the child holding the cat, asking, "I like it," or saying, "I like when Fluffy sleeps on my bed." So this is to say that different audiences will respond to different campaign and educational materials that are most relevant to them. So creating these campaigns or intervention materials, it's really important to think about who is on the receiving end. Lastly, before I move on, in thinking about creating materials for behavior change to instigate behavior change, it's important to think about what is the behavior that you want to change, and that the behavior itself should be quite small. So you can see that in these campaigns, they didn't say keep your cat indoors all the time. It was keep your cat inside at night, because that was something that they found the audience, the pet owners, were willing to do. They were willing to keep their cat inside more, but they were not willing to keep their cat inside all the time. Also, part of outreach to owners, other things that we can do is provide outdoor alternatives. So provide catios, kits for owners to build catios, or sort of subsidized purchases of catios. Also offering leash training of cats. Not all cats will take to a leash, but some will. It's also important to provide information about increased enrichment when cats are shifted from indoor-outdoor to indoor only. Cats experience a lot of stimulation and activity when they're outside, and we need to provide them with an alternative if we're going to ask that cat to stay inside more. Lastly, in engaging with owners, if people are not willing, some people are not willing to change their behavior, and that can be for a lot of different reasons. But an alternative to keeping the cat inside may reduce predation by promoting the use of these birds be safe collars to be worn by the cats when they're outdoors. So these are these sort of clown collars worn by the cat, as seen in the bottom right-hand corner. And the colors on these collars signal to birds that a cat is coming. So cats, being the excellent ambush predators that they are, will sneak along stealthily toward their prey unnoticed until they pounce. Well, the colors on the collar are the birds notice those colors, and as a result, they can see when the cat is coming and will get away before the cat is able to attack. It's also important not just engaging with owners, but also to locate priority areas. Resources are slim. We can't potentially engaging or implementing a campaign across an entire city is not feasible. So instead, we need to target interventions to high priority areas. Strategies should focus at a city block or neighborhood scale because that's about the size of a cat home range. And it's been proposed to create these no cat buffer zones around areas of high biodiversity. So in the figure on the left here, there's two cats, A and B, with their home range shown in a circle around them. And you can see that although cat A doesn't, its home range doesn't encompass any green space, which is the high biodiversity space, cat B does. So imposing a no roam buffer zone around where cat B is located would actually prevent that individual from going inside into the high biodiversity area. Reducing the number of unowned cats is, of course, also very important. And when we think about interventions and reducing the conflicts, so connecting unowned cat caretakers with shelters and veterinarians, pulling in socialized cats from cat colonies into shelters to be adopted out, and then promoting the adoption from shelters over purchase from pet stores or from breeders is really important and can help reduce the number of unowned cats outside. Sterilization programs are also very popular. Trap, neuter, vaccinate, return, or trap, neuter, return is very common. And there is evidence that they can be effective, especially with small and isolated populations. So that refers to colonies of cats where there aren't a lot of individuals, aren't a lot of cats who are coming and going. It's the same group of individuals all the time in this certain area. Uh, these sterilization programs, they do work best when they're done alongside removal of kittens and socialized cats for adoption. Um, and an important piece in terms of how TNR can address cat conflicts is that one of the conflicts being the welfare of the cats themselves. Well, TNR has been shown to improve the welfare of the cats outdoors. So even once they've been returned to their home colony, there is some evidence that they do live longer lives or have a higher quality of life. And that's based on a study that showed that after an intensive TNR campaign, fewer colony cats were brought into shelters for euthanasia than prior to the TNR campaign. And that's not accounting for a reduction in numbers of the population, or that is accounting for a reduction in population numbers. The thing with sterilization programs is that it's highly controversial. It does not reduce the predation or the disease transmission in the short term. It's very expensive. It takes a lot of time and a lot of money. In order for it to be effective, so in order to see a reduction in the number of cats because they are not breeding, about 80 to 90% of the population needs to be sterilized, and that's a lot. Lastly, TNR is slow. We're looking at reduction in reproduction of animals that can live many, many years. So it is the studies that have reported success have been looking at a 10 to 20 year period. Other things that we can do to reduce conflicts are in addressing supplemental feeding. So with unowned cats, there's the possibility of removing the bowls right after feeding to stop cats and wildlife from interacting at a feeding station. Or there's the potential to modify this feeding station to reduce interactions between cats and wildlife. In the figure on the right, you can see in panels A and C, that's where food was just placed on the ground, and the darkest gray bar, cats are so particularly when large quantities were placed on the ground. There are a lot of cat visits, but also raccoons, skunks, and coyotes. In panel B, the food was actually placed on an elevated platform, an elevated surface, and this did not stop the cats from going. There were still plenty of cat visits to the feeding station, but raccoons, skunks, and coyotes weren't there. So this at least could help reduce the disease transmission risk and the welfare concerns to as parts of cat conflicts. Also, supplemental feeding with that intentional feeding of mesocarnivores, uh, efforts can be made to reduce food provisioning of other animals to stop, and I'm not saying bird feeders, but other mesocarnivores, the raccoons, the coyotes, to stop cats from interacting with those animals at feeding stations. And the last potential intervention I'm going to mention is thinking about the habitat that is shared between cats and wildlife. So, bird feeders and pollinator gardens are places where cats can expect to find prey. But they're also beautiful. They're great for local conservation efforts. They are making a difference in saving our biodiversity. But they are also places where predation is very prevalent. So, one option might be to encourage fencing around the garden, around the pollinator garden, around a bird feeder that can deter cats from entering. So, there is no scientifically backed evidence of this being an effective strategy, but we do know from anecdotal data, anecdotal evidence that a lot of cats just won't, even if they could jump over the fence, they won't. So having some kind of fence just stops cats from entering these like high prey, these areas with lots of potential prey and biodiversity. And then, and as a result, reduces the opportunity for predation. So we can see fewer birds being killed by cats. And that's all. I thank you very much for your time. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or want to talk further. Here are the references that I used in my presentation.